6L80E, control body assembly, disassembly. So we have the internal mode switch, the TECHM or transmission control module, the lower valve body casting, spacer plate, upper valve body casting. And case connector. The case connector installs onto the TECHM by way of this locating spline on the inner diameter. It has a lip seal and 2 O-ring seals. First, disconnect the internal mode switch from the TECHM. Then, take loose the clamp that holds it to the lower valve body. Next, remove 10mm bolts that hold it to the casting. Place the internal mode switch aside. Next, remove the TECHM from the valve body assembly. There are 2 8mm bolts . And they are of the same length. Next, there are a series of 7 and 10mm bolts that have to be removed. Seven millimeter bolts are of all the same length. Next, remove the 4 10mm bolts that remain. And that should allow the TECHM to be separated from the valve body assembly. These bolts are also the same length. lastly, flip the assembly over, and you can either take loose the bolt securing the harness to the lower valve body assembly, or simply unplug the TECHM at the case connector here, or at the connector I should say, here on the underside once you have the TECHM otherwise loose from the valve body. Okay, set your TECHM aside. The TECHM will need to have an adaptive learn redone on it once transmission goes back in the vehicle. So it's GM refers to it as a fast adapter. Next, you have your seals. They also come in the kit. You do not have to reuse these seals, and you should not reuse these seals. Okay, you have your wiring harness next. So you have two 8mm bolts. And they are of the same length. In addition to that, they are secured to the casting via these retainers that locate on the little studs. So they will need to be taken loose. Carefully pry up on each until it comes off. And you can set the harness aside. So now you are left with the upper and lower valve body assemblies. Now we have the valve body assembly, sans TECHM IMS and case connector, so that we can now disassemble it and lay out all the valve trains. This half is the upper valve body. This is the half with the seals. And then you have the lower valve body that has the manual valve. And primarily the TECHM and IMS, that whole complex is bolted to the lower valve body. All of the check balls for this assembly are located in the upper valve body here. So we want to take all of these bolts out first, then we will flip everything over and remove these bolts so that we can detach the lower valve body and the spacer plate from the upper valve body, such that the upper valve body's channel castings and check balls are facing up so that they don't fall out all over the place. So 7mm bolts. and we'll remove all the bolts on the upper valve body side first. So here are your 12 bolts. They are all the same length. And now we're going to flip the assembly over. And we're going to take out the remaining 5 bolts. Okay, compared to the upper valve body bolts, as you can see, they are about 20% longer. So they're noticeably longer than the bolts that go into the upper valve body. This way you can be assured that you won't mix them up. Okay, just pry up gently so that you can separate the 2 halves. Okay, here is the lower valve body. Then you have your separator plate, and the separator plate has bonded gaskets. So in other words, the gasket and the plate are one. So you will need to replace the separator plate when you rebuild one of these units. Check ball locations. Here, 2 here, 1 there. One here, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. They are Torlon check balls. Okay, we will work on the lower valve body first. So valve trains are as follows. This is the compensator feed regulator valve, and this is the TCC regulator valve. You have your manual valve, and your clutch select 2 valve, and your clutch select 3 valve, and their associated valve train components. So I will disassemble and lay out the components based on the orientation of the lower valve body facing up, in other words, the channel castings facing down. This would be what you would see if you drop the pan in your transmission, and you'd obviously have your TECHM and your internal mode switch bolted, but this is the U-facing side of the lower valve body assembly. Okay, so these two have square retainers, so you're just going to take a pick and you're just going to force them both upward until you can get pliers and yank them out. I'm going to put the manual valve here first. Okay, they're under a little bit of spring tension, so just be mindful. It's going to be your TCC regulator valve, to your bore plug, shuttle valve, then your regulator valve itself, and the spring. The next is going to be the compensator feed regulator valve. Same deal. It is under a little bit more spring tension than the regulator valve. And suction will keep these valves in here. So you can take a pair of internal external snap ring pliers and just kind of pull them out. Okay, next you're going to have your clutch select valves 2 and 3. Your clutch select 2 valve is going to be closest to the manual valve, and then your clutch select 3 is going to be on the inside. So again, same sort of retainers, and then there's bore plugs behind the retainers. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay these down based on this orientation. So we'll have our 2 and our 3. Gotta pry a little bit so that you can get the bore free from the bore plug free from the bore. Sometimes it helps to push the bore plug inward a little bit, and that will kind of force it out. Alright, again, keep your hand there because it will like to pop out on you. Have your spring. and you just got to work it out with the bore using a combination of picks and anything else that you have. All right, our clutch select 3 valve. Again, always make sure you have a thumb or a finger over these bores so that the bore plugs don't go flying. So clutch select 2 and clutch select 3. So the lower half is now empty. Now we'll disassemble the upper valve body assembly. There are 3 dowels. You do not need to remove any of those dowels. In fact, just leave them alone is your best bet unless they're damaged, which is highly unlikely to be the case. This a little port right here, the pressure port with the sealed plug or plug sealed in place, also does not get removed. We're going to remove every other valve train in this assembly. Okay, so starting from left to right, I'll go over the valve trains. Here we have the 1, 2, 3, 4 clutch boost valve. The 1, 2, 3, 4 clutch regulator valve. The 3, 5 in reverse clutch regulator valve. 3, 5 in reverse boost valve. We have the 2, 6 clutch regulator gain and 2, 6 clutch regulator valves. So there's 2 valves in here. Okay, there's the dowel, there's the plug, and then we have the first reverse and 4, 5, and 6 clutch boost, and the first reverse / 4, 5, 6 clutch regulator valve. And then in this location right here is the actuator feed limit valve. So I'm going to disassemble the valve body and line up all the valve trains based on this orientation here. So in other words, if the valve body casting or assembly was bolted to the case, here are the seals. This valve here, which is your first reverse 4, 5, 6 clutch regulator valve, I'll put here and then just lay everything out from left to right thusly. I know it's the kind of opposite way that I just went over them, but that's how I'm going to do it. Okay, so all of these retainers, you just need a pick, and you want to make sure that your thumb or finger is over the bore so that, you know, nothing goes flying across the room. And I'll do my best to keep everything in the shot. If I struggle with anything, I'll let you know how I resolved it, but I'll probably have to do it off camera. So this one just getting behind the spring. Sometimes the plug will come out far enough that you can grab it, but sometimes it won't. And then you have your valve going in first. So the stem facing inboard and then your spring. And I'll move the camera so that you can see, you know, as I lay out the valve trains, you can see what's going on. And it's just a little too slippery for me. Your spring, and then you have your valve, which is the opposite of the previous valve train. Okay, we're going to skip these two, and then we're going to go to the next one. So this is your 2/6 clutch regulator gain and 2/6 clutch regulator valve trains. Oh. So this one has to come out the other way. All right, 3-5R, and then 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so just pry against the spring in the rear and everything else should come out. Okay, just 2 more to go. Hey, the last valve train here is the AFL valve. I'm not going to take this out quite yet. I'm actually going to put it on the Sonex valve body test machine and check its, sealing integrity. And basically what I'm going to do is pull vacuum. It's a, the tester is designed to use vacuum to, to see how well a given clutch circuit is sealing. So my standard is 15 inches of lift or better. If it's 15 inches of lift or better in a factory application, then I deem that to be a healthy valve body. If it's not, then I deem the valve body to be unhealthy. So we'll go over to the test machine and I'll test this valve and we'll see, what kind of vacuum it's able to hold. So we're at the Sonex valve body testing machine. As mentioned, it uses a vacuum pump along with a gauge and a test lead, a test block, and then a little gasket or seal so that we can pull vacuum out of the AFL clutch circuit and see how much vacuum it's able to hold. So first thing I want to do is turn the pump on. Okay, I have 0 showing, so what I'm then going to do is put a finger right over here on the test port, and then I'm going to adjust the gain until I'm at 25 inches of lift exactly. Then I'm going to release my thumb and I want to see it fall back to 0, exactly 0. So now I know the machine itself is ready and we can begin the test. Here's the AFL clutch circuit port here. I'm going to just lay my seal or gasket or whatever you want to call it, and then put the test block right over top. So now there's this side. Looks like it's holding about 22 inches of lift. We'll take it off and then we're going to try again. Okay, the little dowel will interfere with this test block, so you want to make sure that you're clear of it. And you want to take multiple readings just to make sure that you're getting a consistent reading each time. You may have to press down on the test block to fully seal it against the casting. That's normal. This is giving me 22 inches of lift each and every time I test it. Okay, so we'll go back to the bench and remove the AFL valve, and that will complete the disassembly of the upper valve body. Okay, now we'll go ahead and we'll remove the AFL valve. Actuator feed limit. This one's going to be under some spring tension, so again, like all the others, you just want to make sure you got like a thumb or a finger over the bore when you take the retainer out. My hands are real slippery. So it's like a struggle to hold the pliers. So as you can see, I mean, it's really wound tight there. I'm gonna just pry it out. Okay. Not as smooth as I would have liked, but it's out. So the upper valve body assembly is now fully emptied. Okay, here is everything all apart. You see the valve lineups, castings, spacer plate, along with the TECHM and IMS, as well as all the tools I use to disassemble the valve body. And then drifting over a little bit to the right, almost out of the shot, there are all the bolts. Okay, this is a fairly straightforward valve body to go through. It's not anything, you know, real challenging, no special tools required. You just have to pay attention to detail and, you know, put your valve lineups in the way that they came out, and that's basically it. All right, thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions, comments, go ahead and leave them below. Otherwise, have a great rest of your day.